Hello, welcome to Secure Talk, your trusted source of information on the latest threats, trends, tools, and technology related to cybersecurity and compliance.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Secure Talk. My name is Mark Schreiner, and I'll be your host for this episode of Secure Talk. Today, we're going to be talking with Mr. Javvad Malik, who is the lead security awareness advocate at KnowBe4. And we're going to be talking about, how to do security awareness training, what works, what doesn't, and some of the best practices related to, training people and letting them understand what they should be looking out for, what they should be doing, what they shouldn't be doing when they're confronted with unknown situations like, business emails that look a little bit fishy. But before we do all that, let's say hi to Javvad. Javvad, how are you today?
Oh, I'm very good, thank you. And thank you for having me on your show.
My pleasure. And whereabouts are you located?
I'm based in London, UK.
Oh, great. I'm in Seattle, so we have very similar weather. And has the rainy season started for you?
It has. Yesterday, last night, there was quite a big thunderstorm. So, it's officially rainy season.
Situation normal, yeah. So it's weird that we had this uncharacteristically dry September and forest fires and everything. In fact, 3-4 days ago, we had the worst air quality in the world, which Seattle is not really known for. We're known for, blue skies when the sun's out and lots of trees. But the rain came in, and it's here. It's here now. So the fires are out, and situation's back to normal. So, hey, I got to ask you, when it comes to cybersecurity, oftentimes people want to talk about, SIMs and intrusion detection systems and different types of technology. But really, one of the most important things is the human element. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I don't think that one is more important than the other. I think both of them go hand in hand, your tech side and the human side. But it's a bit like, one of the analogies I like to use is you could have the best cooked food in the world, but if it's like just slopped down on a plate and you're given like a fork, it's not going to be a pleasant experience. But you could have, so the presentation, the way it's delivered to you. I'm talking about a restaurant, not in your home, but
no, in the home I have no choice. I have to eat it, man.
Yeah, exactly. In the home, whatever's there, I'm just glad there's food. But in a restaurant, you have this certain expectation that the whole experience, you want it to be a pleasant one, a nice one, and that's what creates that extra feeling of this is something special. And this is what we see in cybersecurity. The tech stack is vitally important, but then if people are using it wrong, or they don't understand what the limitations of the technology are, or they don't understand what implications their actions can have, then we've only solved half the problem.
Yeah, so it's funny you use that analogy because this weekend I just rewatched the Taiwan movie called Eat, Drink, Man, Woman. And it's primarily, it's about a lot of things, but one of the things is about food. And a huge part of the food, because this is set in Taiwan, is the presentation. So just kind of weird that kind of came out. But I totally agree with you there. Basically, training goes hand in hand with having the right tool sets. When you talk about training, are you talking about training for the frontline people? Or are you talking about training for your executive suite? Or are you talking about training for just your security team?
Oh, I'm talking about training everybody. I think everybody has their part to play. The type of training you give people might vary slightly, but we've seen like criminals just need one small foothold into your organization, and they will attack your execs in one way, your security team in another way, and your other colleagues in other departments in another way. So we need to make everyone aware of the kind of issues that are out there, and I do say that make them aware. We're not. I think one of the mistakes a lot of people make is they try to make everyone a security expert, and that's not what the intention here at all is. It's how do you just make people aware enough that they can spot something that looks a bit fishy, and how to report it. That's all we're asking them to do. We're not trying to get them to forensically analyze the links or anything. Just say, hey, if this looks a bit weird, just report it.
And how do you do that?
That's a $1 million question, isn't it? And I think one place where a lot of organizations start is they'll say, okay, well, phishing is the number one sort of like most popular way because it's so cheap and free and accessible to every criminal and wannabe criminal. Let's send out some simulated phishing emails to our staff and let's see if any of them fall for it. And if they fall for it, we'll give them some education. And the problem with that approach as a concept is that how do people feel once they've been quote unquote tricked by one of your emails? And this is the key point. I think if people feel like they've been tricked or duped, or the security team is just being the security team again, then they're going to get defensive about everything, and you're not going to build good relations. So I think that the primary thing is, how do you build good relations with your employees first before you even send that first phishing email? Let them know that this is something you're going to do, why you're going to do it, what to expect from it. And that can build up that relationship where people feel like we're doing this together. And I was reading this research done by, well, it's a survey done by international hotel chain. And they do a customer satisfaction survey. So after every stay, they'll say, look, on a scale of 1 to 5, how was your check-in? How was your breakfast? How was your bed? How was your TV? All that kind of stuff. And what they found was that people that had a pleasant check-in experience, they rated it high, they scored everything else higher as a result compared to someone that had a poor check-in experience. So that initial contact makes such a big difference because that sets the tone in your mind as to how you perceive that hotel going forward.
Well, 100%. I mean, because that's kind of some, I wouldn't call it basic psychology, but it is psychology. It's, that's the affirmation bias and cognitive dissonance all play into that. It's like when stand-up comedians, when they go up on stage, they have to get that first laugh right away, because then people say, oh, this is a funny guy. And once I've said to myself, he's a funny guy or funny gal, everything else I want to kind of, affirm that, or confirm that, whatever. And it's funny you use that example, because I just had like one of the worst check-in experiences ever. And it was just like this massively long line. Okay. I was exhausted. The parking was literally 20 minutes away from the front desk. And I had to, I had a couple different things that I had to, because it was a work event. So I had like some stuff for our booth. So I had to go back and forth to the car. Long line to check in. The keys didn't work. I had to go back, and they're like, and I hated that hotel. I was there for 4 days. No matter what they did after that, they were screwed.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No,
Sorry.
Exactly. Yeah, and this works everywhere. It's like when you check into your airplane, or how the security is at the airport. It all affects you, and this is it. I say to people, like, okay, what is the first point that your security team has interaction with employees or your colleagues? And if it's like, oh, during induction week, we subject them to coffee, donuts, and a 50-minute PowerPoint, or the first time someone actually hears from us is when we slap them on the wrist for doing something wrong, or most likely we're in a project and we're the Department of No saying you can't have this, you can't have that, then that will set up the relationship going forward. And that's something we really need to work on as an industry working within these organizations.
So what are some best practices in terms of messaging? I totally agree with you. It's important to explain to people, one, cybersecurity is everybody's responsibility. It's not just, the people back in the IT team or that subset of the IT team. It's everybody's awareness. Just like at the end of the day, profitability is everybody's responsibility. So everybody needs to be aware, and everybody needs to take responsibility. But like you said, we're not expecting you to do anything super techy or anything like that. We just want you to be aware. How do you message that, and like how often do you message it? What's the most effective way to just, because you got to realize that everybody's bombarded with all kinds of messages and all kinds of training. You got to do your anti-money laundering training, you got to do your diversity awareness training, you got it's just, and then you've got your job specific training. So you're competing for mind share. How do you do it in an effective way?
Yeah, I think one of the key things we can do is like, obviously there's the compliance side, which forces us to do some level of training and record it. But I think beyond that, I think we need to think less like trainers and more like marketers, and just be really specific as to what key behaviors are we looking to change. I think it's a if you think you can teach everybody about every risk out there at the same time, you're going to really confuse people. So I think look through your incident logs in the last couple of years and see what was the main root cause of majority of your incidents. What was it? Spear phishing? Was it maybe people plugging in USBs that they shouldn't? Was it people walking into the office and without a badge or being not challenged? Whatever that might be. I say just pick the one or two that are really top of your list and spend a year just focusing on those. And think of it like a marketing campaign, just really small but frequent, micro training almost that you can do. And I think that has more impact, because what you see is that, especially if you do it across different channels. So don't just make everything a video module that you need to watch, but have something as a screensaver, give people mouse mats or put them as posters over the common areas by the coffee machines and what have you. And what you'll start to see from that is that slowly people begin to change the behavior. And not everyone, but some people will. And once you identify those people, you can start working with them more. They can become effectively your security champions or your security advocates within the organization. And when you have a few people within the organization start exhibiting a certain behavior, that then has that knock-on effect on other people around you. I read this trick that some restaurants do, is that if they see a large group at one come in, like say a work party has come in, there's 10 of them at one table, they'll put a table of two next to them, and for the table of two, they'll actually bring out their best dessert complimentary, like massive, like
oh my God,
free.
That's so funny.
Yeah, and the whole idea is that they know one of them from the table of 10 will look over and say, they look great, let's have a round of those over here. So they've suddenly upsold. So the power of that, monkey see, monkey do, is not to be underestimated, and we can really leverage that from a psychological perspective as to raise that security behavior change and ultimately create that culture of security.
I like that marketing approach. That's awesome. Hey, so let's talk about real world actions and practicalities. What does, once you've created awareness, like, hey, we're going to be, cybersecurity is important. Here's why it's important. And we're going to be doing an ongoing kind of campaign of training and awareness. Then what does it actually look like?
So that looks in many ways that looks slightly different depending on the type of organization you have and the type of overall culture. So some organizations, they're very chatty organizations, they're very like humor driven or what have you, and others are more conservative and what have you. So you need to pick the tone and style that matches that. But I'd say once you understand what behaviors you want to do, baseline them. So you have some metric or some measurement as to how bad it is. And so that's where, so for example, if you're targeting phishing, run a simulated phishing campaign, see how many people respond to it. And that gives you the baseline. Okay, 30% of our organization is going to click or potentially fall for a phishing email. Okay, so that's your starting point, and you can record that. Then roll out your campaign where maybe once every 6 weeks, you're going to randomly send out phishing emails. And then on top of it, you're going to do some micro learning as to like, okay, if you see something fishy, just report it. And this is the way to report it. And then you have those posters everywhere. It's almost like see it, say it, report it, or whatever you see on the underground over here, or around the world. You normally see it like anti-terror type of messaging that people have. If you suspect something to be a bomb, just dial 911 or whatever it is and report it. So layering that message over a period of time across your different channels that you have available, and then re-baseline after 3 months, after 6 months, after 12 months, and you should see that percentage improving. And if it doesn't improve, then there's clearly something you need to adjust or tweak in terms of your messaging. One thing that some organizations do to great success is actually involve their comms team internally to help them work out what the best way is, because and for smaller companies, sometimes it's okay. You can just send out your communications directly, but especially larger orgs with lots of different departments across different geographies, you need to be a bit sensitive to the different approaches. And comms teams are normally really good. They say, okay, for this country, we should just put it on SharePoint or our intranet page or something. For this area, we have a town hall every month. Let's announce it there. So the tools are all there. I think it's not like a problem where we lack the tools. It's really the implementation, and just keep it like consistent so people are just reinforced with those messages over that period of time, and you should see that change in behavior.
Great. Do you typically work with security teams, or do you typically go in and work with the compliance team, or is it HR, learning and development? I mean, what's your point of entry into most organizations?
It really varies. So in some countries, so like in North America, for example, a lot of it is, I'd say, more heavily leaning towards the security teams. In other parts of the world, so in Australia, for example, it's largely led by HR teams, and then you have a variety of entry points everywhere. So it really depends on who's in charge. But depending on who's doing it, the sort of like from our end, the education for them becomes slightly different, because oftentimes people are told by a regulator or something that, oh, you need to do some sort of security awareness training. They'll look up a vendor, say, okay, that meets our criteria. That will get us that tick box, and that's fine. But as providers in this area, we have a responsibility to say, hey, okay, you can tick your box, but really, we want to go above and beyond that, because this helps people not just in the workforce, but also at home and with their friends and family and, everything like that.
Actually, that's a really good point, that there is some carry-on effect there, because, we're all colleagues or employees, but we're also just individuals and family members, and we need to protect our stuff. So, since you're active in many different countries, I'm wondering if you see any differences in terms of, one, cyber awareness, and two, the willingness or openness for training across different geographies.
Yeah, that's a really great question, because we do, and we actually publish an annual report, Phishing by Industry Benchmark report, which actually breaks down the industries and the geographies around the world. And so you'll see areas like Europe, they're sort of like quite a lot more focused on the culture piece. So they've got, so when you break it down to the ABC, the awareness, behavior, and culture, they're quite understanding as to like the awareness piece. That's been for years, starting from compliance and what have you, and they're changing behaviors, and now they want to work out how to create that culture. So that's kind of like where we go in with over there. Other areas, they're very much compliance driven. So so some of the Far East countries, they're like very, okay, compliance says this, we have to do it, and for them it's a very easy sort of rollout approach. This is mandatory, everyone must do it, and they do it. In the US, we have like different sort of like organizations. There's a lot of awareness and behavior still there. There's a lot of sort of like that basic level, especially in the SMB market space. You can see, a lot of people are still trying to work out, for many of them, it's their first exposure to cybersecurity as a discipline. So you have one IT person who's managing the IT and responsible for security and responsible for watering the plants during this lunch break. So it really does vary depending on the organization size, but geography wise, we also see this distinct approach to how people react to these messaging.
Excellent. And I'm assuming that, I mean, you measure your performance based upon, like, for example, if you do a phishing campaign, you can see, the percentage of emails that were opened or clicked on or something like along those terms. Do you have any other kind of measurement criteria that you look at?
Yeah, so phishing click-through rates is a really popular one. That's one of the ones that everyone starts with. But the reporting criteria, I think, is one of the key ones. It's the important ones. It's like KnowBe4 we provide something that's called the fish alert button, which is like a sort of plugin that goes into your Outlook or Gmail. So when a user receives an email that they think is a phished email, they just click the button and it takes it out of their inbox and sends it to the security team. And then they can investigate it, and then they can either send it back if it's clean, or they can withhold it if it's a phish. So measuring how many people actually report an email, and then how many of those are accurate reports for real phishing emails versus not, that is a key metric, because ultimately that's when you think about out of all the behaviors, that's the one behavior we want. We want people to report. And there's a strong case for like whether they even understand the why to the behavior is kind of secondary. It's a bit like when I go to throw out rubbish in the bins, and there's a recycling bin and a waste bin and a cardboard bin. I will separate them out. Does it really matter whether I understand if my actions are saving the polar bears or stopping the polar ice caps from melting or reducing global warming? Not really. As long as I'm carrying out the action, if that behavior is being done, then that's mission accomplished. And this is where I think it goes back to, like, we're not trying to make everyone a security expert. We just want them to adopt certain behaviors in the right way.
Makes a lot of sense. I'm just curious, like, do you see the threat landscape evolving at all? And if so, how does your training evolve to kind of match the threat landscape? And if it is evolving, what are you seeing as like the biggest, areas of concern?
Yeah, the threat landscape is always evolving, isn't it? It's never really static. As soon as we plug one hole, there's like, three others emerge. And so one of the things we start seeing a lot of is kind of like layered or multi-channel attacks that come in. And so as people say, for example, get better at spotting a phishing email. So I send you an email saying, hey, Mark, it's Netflix and your credit card's expiring. Click here to update it. You're probably getting better at spotting that. But if I send you...
You're the one that sent that email. I get that like 3 times a week.
It was a test. But it's like, if I send you an SMS first and say, hey, this is Netflix. There's an issue with your account. We'll be sending you a communication. And then we send you that email. You're more likely to fall for it because there's more effort going into the prepping of it, and you're like, well, surely it's coming through one channel and then another channel. Who, surely only they know my details, and that kind of thing. And we've seen those kinds of things work really effectively recently against MFA attacks, where there's the MFA fatigue type of attack, where someone's got your ID and password, they're trying to sign in, and you're getting the pop-up, the push notifications on your phone saying, do you want to log in? And you say, no. And you're getting really fed up. And then you receive a WhatsApp message saying, hello, this is your security team. There's an issue with some profiles. So if you're getting these pop-ups, just click yes and it will go away. And at that point, You're so fed up, you'll be like, okay. And you click yes. And that's game over. That's how criminals are getting into organizations now. So
those sneaky, low-down criminals, man. Oh, yeah, multi-layered attacks. That's God, and it's funny because if you think about it from their side, it's just a numbers game, right? They're like, hey, let's try this, and if they get one guy like me or you that clicks and says yes per day, they're golden. They're wherever they're sitting in Eastern Europe or Russia. Not to stereotype those places, but I'm just saying wherever they're sitting, they could be sitting here in the U.S. They've made their day's wages right there. It's pretty scary, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And
so, go ahead.
Sorry. Oh no. The other thing I think we're going to see more of in the future is use of deepfake technology to try and muddy the waters a bit more. So we're already seeing, or we've already heard of a few instances where people have claimed that a voice deepfake was used to impersonate someone on the phone. and so they believed they were speaking to the CEO or whoever, and that's why they made a payment to someone, and that it wasn't the CEO.
And how do you get around that? I mean, because everybody gets the email from the CEO saying, "Hey, I need you to urgently, run down to Target and buy 50 gift cards for this event that we're having, and let me know when you're done." And the guy goes like, "Oh, I'm new at the company. I better go do it," right? I mean, we all know that, but like, if you get a phone call from the CEO or somebody pretending to be the CEO, impersonating the CEO, how do you? What are some best practices to kind of work your way through that?
Yeah. So I think one thing is like you need to have the processes set in beforehand. So as an organization, you need to say, okay, for any new payments or any new weird sort of like gift cards or changing a payment detail, there needs to be a process that you follow. So the request needs to be entered into your finance system, and it needs to be approved by somebody else. So it's not a single person that can actually fall for it. You have to like get into the system, and you have to convince 2 or 3 people that this is legitimate, and that's how it goes through. So I think having that process in place is really important. And the second thing is like even if someone's followed the process, or regardless of whether you have that in place or even if they come directly, you should have a way that something can get challenged or queried or checked through a second channel. So even if the CEO phones you up and says like, "Hey, do this," there should be a way where you can like, okay, maybe I'll Slack their PA or EA or someone and say, "Hey, did they send me this message? Are they actually getting on a flight right now?" All those kinds of things, so that you can go through that process and say, okay, this is the thing. It's a lot easier in these situations to ask for forgiveness later than to actually go through with it and potentially cause damage to well, financially and reputationally.
Totally agree. And it's funny though that sense of urgency, like you mentioned, "Hey, I'm getting onto a plane. I'm not going to be in touch for a while, but I need you to get this done so that when I arrive, it's already there," or whatever it is, right? And that sense of urgency, especially when you get somebody new to the company. I had a situation. It wasn't too long ago that we just had a new hire. Person was reporting to me, and they got an email from the CEO, or it looked like it was from the CEO. It was a spoofed email address, but it looked very, very much like the CEO's email. Say, "Hey, welcome to the team. Da da da. I have this situation. I need your help on." And it was basically, go out and buy gift cards, which is, it's bizarre that, because I mean, how many companies do that? But the person joining the company, it was their first job out of university. And so they don't know what's normal, what's not normal. And, but they did the smart thing. They forwarded the email to me and saying, "Hey, how should I respond to this?" And I was like, "I got it."
Yeah.
Let's say, first off, let's look at the email address. And it looks like it's from the CEO, but if you look closely, it's not. But good job forwarding it to me. And so that's what you want. And that person actually hadn't had any training. And it kind of makes me think that younger people these days, probably, the digital natives, probably in general have a certain amount of awareness, where like older generation people like me were, this whole internet thing is all kind of new, right? I lived half my life without anything called an internet or a mobile phone. So we kind of had to learn security on the fly, where digital natives, this whole like, awareness of what you post on social media, and being a little bit suspicious of kind of unknown emails and things like that. It's probably kind of baked into them a bit. I mean, do you see that at all? Any kind of generational difference?
Yeah. I mean, it's weird. I think that there is definitely a generational difference. I just think that older people, or like depending on which generation you're from, you'll just fall for different types of attacks. So there's certain trigger points that will get older people a lot easier, but they won't get younger people, or the digital natives, as you rightly called them. But then there are certain things that digital natives are way too comfortable about sharing online, or allowing or trusting certain apps or certain mediums more than others, and so they'll fall likely fall for those. But so it's not that I think any group is completely immune, but the way the attacks currently come in, I think digital natives in the majority of cases can spot them a lot better, or they can be a bit more suspicious of them.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that kind of concerns me, I'm not sure if that's the right word, but I'm aware of is I see people posting pictures that when they're on vacation, for example, and these are real time. And so like, hey, look at us. We're going to be in Cancun for the next week. This is awesome. And basically, you've just told anybody and everybody that you're not at home, you know? So I see stuff like that, or, you know, posting stuff about your company, things like that. What are your, let's just say you were going to give 3 pieces of advice. And I know that, you know, it really is dependent upon the audience, but let's just say in general, 3 pieces of advice in terms of cybersecurity awareness and, you know, protection.
Oh, 3 pieces of advice. This is a hard one. So let me think. I think the first thing that I would say is it's okay to come across as rude. A lot of us fall for scams because we are overly polite. So, you know, we see someone in the office without a badge. We've never seen them before, but we feel a bit awkward to either challenge them or to even report them because we think it's socially unacceptable. Same thing.
You know what? I mean, I love that you brought that up, because so many times we think about cybersecurity and we forget about the physical element of it, and it's hugely important. It's massively. But continue, please.
Yeah, and I think same thing when someone phones you up and they say, "Hello, I'm from Microsoft. There's a problem with it." Don't be afraid just to hang up. It's not being rude. It's you just setting those that security controls around you. If it's something really important, you can always find it out later. So that's what I'd say. Number 1. Number 2, I'd say, you know, I'm trying to think that based on what we just spoke about people oversharing online, I think it's really hard to convince people to reduce their digital footprint because a lot of people are just addicted to these apps where they like to share what they're up to and where they are and what they're eating and what have you. But what I would say is that
isn't that funny? It's so bizarre, right?
It is.
Hey, look at my tacos, man.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I mean, what weird world are we living in, man?
Honestly, this is turning into like the old men shout at cloud episode now.
Yeah.
But
no,
honestly,
it's funny because I lived in Japan for 6 years, and that is like for Japanese, and I don't even care if it's a stereotype, but in Japan, it's incredibly like common and popular to share pictures of your meal. Okay, it's just like
yeah. And it happens over here as well. Like you go to a restaurant and the food comes out on this massive platter, and like you see people like, no, we're not touching the food yet. We have to do a full photo shoot to share online.
Or pass the phone to the wait staff and say, hey, can you get a picture of us with
the food? So I'd say, like, I think it's not a lot of value in saying reduce your online footprint, but what I will say is, if you're not legally obliged to tell the truth, lie when you're online. And what I mean by that is, don't use your real name as in all your profiles. Use a shortened name. Use a misspelt name. Don't actually say where you're based. Don't say I live in London. Say, you know, name a place just outside of London or something.
But you told me you're in London. Now I'm getting a little bit suspicious, man.
Yeah.
Is this really Javvad?
But yeah, no, I think it's just like these little things. What they can do is they can just help prevent people from, when they use their automated tools to try and build up a profile, to cross-connect your identities. It just becomes that difficult. And I think just making it a little bit more difficult for criminals is in most cases good enough for a lot of us. You know, obviously I would say try not to post so much or try to restrict who can view those things. But if you can't do that, then at the very least, you know, because your friends will know who you are and they can follow you. And for strangers, if they're just interested in your content, then they don't really care who you really are, technically. So I'd say just don't be afraid to lie a bit online.
Okay, that's the first time I've heard that, but it makes a lot of sense. And then in terms of, I mean, because, you know, I mean, I haven't seen the latest statistics, but it's, you know, the majority of most compromises for organizations originate from some type of business email compromise attempt. what advice would you give in terms of spotting bogus emails?
Yeah, I think like you mentioned earlier, a lot of it is about the emotion, and the thing that differentiates a lot of any sort of phishing scam like or any BEC email is that there's always trying to put in place some sort of urgency. They're trying to like come from a position of authority. It's something catastrophic is going to happen if you don't do this right now. So there's a lot of emotion. They try to put pressure on you. They try to use some sort of tactics on you to get you into that emotional state. And Daniel Kahneman, he wrote a book called Thinking Fast and Slow. And he speaks about these two types of thinking we have. There's system one thinking, which is like our monkey brain. It's very efficient. It's very quick. It's also very emotional. And then the system two thinking, which is used for more complicated tasks that we slow down, we need to think about. So if I say what's 2 and 2, I was like 4, that's system 1 thinking. If I say what's 17 multiplied by 300, okay, that's system 2 thinking. I need to think about that for a while. So the point of that is that when a BC email comes in, the whole thing is structured to keep you in system 1 thinking, to make you feel emotionally responsive to it at that point in time. So the first thing is, I think, is just a bit about mindfulness, about, how are we perceiving this, how are we responding to this? And if we feel like anything comes in and tries to get us in an emotional state, the best thing I'd say is that even if you're like a bit unsure of whether to report it to the security team, just turn to your colleague who's next to you, closer to you, or on Slack or whatever you, and just say, hey, this has come in. Can you take a look at it? What does your gut say? Because oftentimes when someone's not directly the recipient, they won't have that same emotional reaction, and they can give you that impartial advice. Say, well, there's like these 50 red flags in this that I can see. Let's just report this to the security team.
That's some awesome advice there, and totally 100% agree. I just like to add that sometimes the emails, the attempts, aren't requests for you to do, hey, go out and buy gift cards, or hey, I need you to transfer this money. I was actually received an email, this is a few years back, for an order. And I'm responsible typically for business development at that time, and I got this order for, it was like 70 Microsoft Surface devices. I think the total came out to, I don't know, it was like close to $200,000, and I was like, yeah, this is awesome. But I was like, wait a minute, but who are these people? Like, I typically, on my radar I'd have, and but the PO looked super legit. I mean, we all see the poor quality phishing campaigns that come in, and we're like, this is funny. This is clearly, not real. But the PO looked super legit. I actually called them to confirm, and they're like, oh yeah. But here's the deal. We need you to ship them to this location here in Portland because we're having this big project. So I was like, okay, wait a minute. So your office is here, but I'm shipping them. And then I did a research on that location, and it was a hotel out near the airport. And I was like, this is kind of, and then, so I went online. Instead of calling the number on the PO, I actually went online, found the company. It was a legit company. Everything on the PO was accurate except for the phone number. I called the number on the website and asked to talk to the procurement team. And soon as the guy picked up the phone, he said, "It's a lie. Don't do it." I mean, so obviously we weren't the first ones that got hit, and he was like hyper vigilant and aware that other people are out there and that were receiving this. And it was just like, wow, man. I mean, I wonder, because again, it's just like if they get one shipment of a couple $100,000 worth of laptops, and they probably sell them on the whatever the black market for half, but whatever, man. I mean, they're done for the next month or two, and it's just like you just a healthy dose of skepticism is really, really important. If something looks like it's too good to be true, which like for me it was an unsolicited order for all, all those devices, I was like, God, this is awesome. I mean, that was a different kind of emotion. That's not like the CEO freaking me out. This is like me going like, yeah, look at this. My commission's going to be X, and if it looks too good to be true, it probably is. Make sense?
Absolutely. I mean, this is it. You're right. And, we always think about the fear as emotion, but this like, elation or greed, like we've seen people like with job offers that are too good to be true. And they're like, yes. And, they're like, spilling their company secrets in the interviews or what have you.
Wow.
There's even like romance scams are such a big thing where criminals would target like people who are like, probably like widows or widowers, and they're lonely. They're at that stage of their life where maybe the kids have flown the nest and what have you. There's actually a case I read just a week or so ago. There's a Japanese lady, 65 years old, who fell in love with someone online, and she was sending him money because apparently he was a Russian astronaut on board the International Space Station, and he wanted to meet her. But he needed the money to afford the one-way return ticket to Earth.
From space?
Yes.
Where was he at?
Well, he was on the International Space Station, apparently.
Yeah. Okay. So,
but we don't know where he actually was. But yeah, she over the course of a few months, she ended up sending him near about $30,000.
Wow.
And before she went to the police, and they informed her that it was a scam.
Well, it's funny because I lived in Japan for 6 years, and this is kind of slightly off topic, but related. It's an incredibly safe country, okay, and very, very low incidences or percentages of violent crime, very low incidences of theft. But one thing they do have is these kind of social engineering grifts or what's the word, swindles, and because they have they have probably one of the oldest populations in the world, and a lot of the people they're older, they're vulnerable, and you'll have these people who will call them and impersonate a grandson, a nephew, a niece, and say, oh, and then after about the third phone call, they're like, oh, I need some money. And it happens all the time. And we only hear about the ones that get reported. But, obviously that's just the tip of the iceberg, because some people, one, they never figure out they were scammed. Two, they figure out they were scammed, but then what do they do about it, right? Who do they talk to? So that's really sad. But it's good that you and I and other people are out talking about it. Hopefully it creates awareness. Probably not in Japan because they're not listening to this, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, hey, Javvad, I enjoy talking with you. If people want more information about KnowBe4 or to connect with you, because I think that you also do some blogging and you're speaker, industry commentator, where should they go? What should they look at?
Yeah. So KnowBe4 is KNOWBE and then the number 4.com. It's one of the domains it's a brand name that is awesome, but it's a pain to spell out and tell people with the website. But that's a website, KnowBe4.com. And if you want to follow me, I do have my own website. It's JavadMalik.com. That's JAVVADMALIK.com. And over there you'll find links to all of my YouTube, my TikTok, my Twitter, my LinkedIn. Everything is just on there. So yeah, stalk me.
Awesome. Well, hey, Javvad, assuming that's your real name, but it was great talking with you, and I wish you a tremendous, remainder of 2022.
Thank you so much, Mark. Really appreciate it.
Hello, welcome to Secure Talk, your trusted source of information on the latest threats, trends, tools, and technology related to cybersecurity and compliance.